Ever wondered what could possibly drive a team to betray one of their own? A hero, not just any hero, but someone who's fought battles, saved lives, and been the face of hope for so many. Imagine being that hero, someone who the world looks up to, and then, out of nowhere, you're blindsided by the very people you trusted most. You might be asking yourself, why would they do that? What could possibly be their reason? Well, stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to have all the answers to one of the most shocking betrayals in superhero history. But hold on tight, because this story is about to take some unexpected turns. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single second. You're here because you want answers. You've been intrigued by the headline, "Superhero Kidnapped by His Own Team," and you can't help but wonder what would make a group of people who were once allies turn on their own. It's a question that has puzzled not only the hero at the center of this story, but everyone who's ever looked up to him. This is a tale of loyalty, power, deception, and the dark side of what it means to be a hero in a world that often forgets that even the strongest can be broken. And as we dive deeper into this shocking mystery, I promise you'll feel your curiosity growing, your emotions building, and you'll want to keep watching until we uncover the truth together. So, let me ask you this. What would it take for the hero to become the victim? The answer is more complex than you might think, and it begins with a team, an alliance that's supposed to be unbreakable, that is supposed to stand for justice, truth, and protection. But somewhere along the way, something went horribly wrong. You see, it's easy to get lost in the idea of superheroes being invincible, unshakable, and never vulnerable. But that's where this story flips the script. We're going to take you into a world where even heroes have their limits, their weaknesses, and their breaking points. And that's exactly what makes the betrayal so devastating. It wasn't just physical captivity. It was emotional, psychological, and something far more sinister. Throughout this video, we'll peel back the layers of a complex relationship between the hero and his team, exploring the reasons that led to the fateful moment of his kidnapping. What drives a group of trusted allies to betray their own? Is it ambition, fear, greed, or something darker? As we delve into the details, you'll get to know each of the key players, members of the team who once shared a bond that seemed unshakable. The questions are endless, and the answers are closer than you think. But here's the twist. You might not expect the truth to be what you think it is. This isn't just a simple tale of betrayal. It's about the deep, underlying forces that drive people to make unimaginable choices. By now, you might be wondering, how could a team betray one of their own? How could they kidnap their superhero, the one who's always had their backs, the one who stood as their protector? Trust me, you're going to be surprised, because the reasons go far beyond anything you probably imagined. It's about power dynamics, secrets, and yes, the dark side of heroism itself. Heroes aren't always what they seem, and as we take a closer look at their motives, you might just start to question the very idea of what it means to be a hero and who really deserves that title. So, before we get into the heart of the betrayal, let's take a moment to understand who the hero is. This is someone you might have seen as invincible, someone who's capable of doing the impossible, someone who is always one step ahead of everyone else. But like all heroes, he's human. And that's where the story gets even more interesting. Because despite the extraordinary abilities he possesses, he's not immune to the pressures, the psychological toll, or the betrayals of those he cares about. It's these cracks in the hero's facade that make this story so compelling and relatable. Now, let's get back to that key question. Why? Why would his own team, people who shared the same mission, the same ideals, and fought side by side with him for so long, suddenly decide to turn against him? It's a question that doesn't have a simple answer. And as you'll discover in the upcoming chapters of this story, the reasons are deeply rooted in their own personal struggles, ambitions, and a sense of fear that's been building for a long time. But here's the kicker. It's not just about betrayal. It's about a plan. A very elaborate plan that's been set into motion for far longer than anyone realized. As we continue, we'll dive deep into the psychological warfare, the mind games, and the manipulations that led to this shocking event. You'll see how each member of the team played a role in the downfall of their once unstoppable leader. But remember, not everything is as it seems. The truth behind the kidnapping isn't just about the betrayal. It's about the twisted motivations that pushed everyone to make the choices they did. And while we're still unraveling the story, You have to remember that there's always more than meets the eye. But here's the thing. You're going to want to keep watching, because as we dive deeper into the characters, their motivations, and the events leading up to the fateful kidnapping, you'll start to see things from a whole new perspective. And just when you think you have it figured out, we'll throw in a curveball that will completely change your understanding of the entire situation. This isn't just another story of good versus evil. This is about the gray areas, the moral dilemmas, and the lines that get blurred when power, trust, and loyalty come into play. As we explore the aftermath of the kidnapping, you'll also get a glimpse of what happens next. What does a hero do now, locked away by those he once called family? How does he respond when he realizes that the people he trusted most have turned their backs on him? And what does it mean for the future of the team, the world they've been trying to protect, and the balance of power that's now been disrupted? It's time to buckle up, because we're about to go down a rabbit hole of shocking twists, intense drama, and a roller coaster of emotions. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the hero was kidnapped by his own team, and the truth might just be more complicated than you ever imagined. So, are you ready to dive deeper into the story? I'm about to reveal everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Stay with me until the end, because the twists keep coming, and the truth behind this betrayal will leave you speechless. The story truly begins in a time before betrayal, a time when the team was seen as the ultimate symbol of unity and power. They weren't just a group of individuals with extraordinary abilities. They were a family. Each member had their own distinct skill set, their own backstory that led them to become part of this heroic alliance. They had a bond that went beyond teamwork. It was something deeper, something more primal. They were united by a common cause, a shared purpose to protect the world from the darkness that threatened to consume it. The hero at the center of this was a beacon of hope, someone who had earned the trust and admiration of everyone, not just because of his powers, but because of his heart. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a leader, someone who could see the good in people and inspire them to rise above their own doubts and fears. But even the most tightly knit teams have their fractures, and as time went on, cracks began to form in this seemingly perfect union. It started small, almost imperceptible, misunderstandings, subtle disagreements, and differences in ideology. At first, these things didn't seem like a threat to the unity of the group. After all, everyone had their own way of doing things, their own ideas of what was right and wrong. But as the stakes grew higher, so did the pressure. The team was forced to make decisions that would change the course of history, and not all of those decisions were easy. Not all of them were unanimous. The tension was most pronounced in the moments when the team was forced to confront the bigger questions. What does it mean to be a hero? Is it about saving people, or is it about making difficult choices, no matter the personal cost? And more importantly, who gets to decide the answers to those questions? The lines between good and evil began to blur, and the heroes who had once shared a singular vision now found themselves standing on different sides of the same battle. The team leader, the hero, was always the one who tried to keep the peace, to hold the team together when things started to fall apart. He believed in the idea of unity above all else. He believed that the team, no matter how much they disagreed, could always find common ground. But this was a belief born of idealism, not a reflection of the complexities of the real world. And as the team's moral compass began to falter, the hero found himself alone in his convictions, a relic of a time when loyalty and trust were all that mattered. The team had always been more than just a group of powerful individuals. They were a collection of unique personalities, each carrying their own baggage and past that shaped who they were. The strategist, brilliant but calculating, often found himself at odds with the hero's more idealistic approach. His mind was a labyrinth of possibilities, each one weighted by the potential consequences. He saw things in terms of numbers, of probabilities, and often found himself questioning the hero's decisions, wondering if they were too risky, too naive. The warrior, fiercely loyal yet driven by an insatiable thirst for vengeance, had a past filled with pain and loss that haunted him. His anger, while a source of strength, often clouded his judgment, and his actions became unpredictable, sometimes violent. Then there was the empath, someone who could feel the emotions of others so deeply that it often left her torn between her duty to the team and her desire to help those in need. She struggled with the weight of the team's decisions, and as the moral divide grew, She found herself questioning whether the hero's way was truly the right path. Her bond with the hero was one of mutual respect, but even she couldn't deny the growing divide between them. And let's not forget the outsider, the newest member of the team. Fresh-faced and eager, this individual was more than just a wild card. They brought with them a unique set of skills that could turn the tide in battles, but also a history that none of the others fully understood. They were still learning to trust, still proving themselves. But as time passed, they began to see cracks in the hero's leadership, and that suspicion would lead them to make a choice that would alter the fate of the entire team. As the team faced greater threats, both external and internal, the cracks in their unity deepened. Missions became more dangerous, the stakes higher, and trust harder to come by. The more they fought together, the more they discovered that their own fears and insecurities were beginning to cloud their judgment. It was no longer enough to just save the world. They needed to save themselves from the shadows of their own minds. The tipping point came one fateful evening, during a mission that would change everything. They were tasked with stopping a powerful, rogue faction that threatened the stability of the entire world. The mission seemed straightforward. Too straightforward, in fact. The hero, confident in his leadership, led the charge, but as the team infiltrated the enemy's base, things quickly spiraled out of control. An ambush. The hero was captured. But it wasn't just the enemy that took him. It was his own team that set the trap. Betrayal. The question now isn't just about who set the trap. It's about why. What was the catalyst for such an extreme decision? Why would they go so far? And who, exactly, was behind it all? As the hero was dragged away, the rest of the team was left in chaos. There was no clear leader anymore. The strategist's cold logic began to unravel, and the warrior's thirst for vengeance only grew. The empath, torn between the team's fractured loyalties, struggled to keep her composure. And the outsider, who had once been a wild card, now found themselves questioning everything they had once believed in. Their past, their loyalty, and their sense of justice. All of it was called into question in the aftermath of the hero's kidnapping. In the days following the betrayal, the team fractured even further. Accusations flew, and paranoia took root. Was the kidnapping part of a larger scheme, or had the hero truly been abandoned by those he once called friends? Was it a matter of power or control, or was it something even more personal? Each member of the team began to retreat into their own corner, struggling with the weight of their actions. The deeper they dug into the mystery of the kidnapping, the more complicated it became. The question of why the hero was taken didn't have an easy answer. It was tied to secrets long buried, hidden motives, and personal demons. No one was entirely innocent. No one was entirely trustworthy. Every step forward only revealed more questions, and every answer seemed to open the door to new mysteries. There was no easy resolution, no simple answer to the chaos that had ensued. But that was the point of no return. The team had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The real question now was whether the hero could escape his captivity. And if he did, would he ever be able to trust his team again? Or was a betrayal so deep that it could never be repaired? As we move closer to the truth behind the hero's kidnapping, you'll see how the darkness within each of them has shaped their decisions, and how it may be their undoing. What they don't realize is that this is only the beginning of a much larger game, one that will test their very souls and force them to confront the consequences of their choices. And as they begin to piece together the fragments of their fractured alliance, they will learn that some secrets are too dangerous to keep hidden, and some betrayals are impossible to forgive. But who is pulling the strings? And who will survive the fallout when all is said and done? This story isn't over yet. In fact, it's just beginning. The days following the hero's sudden disappearance were marked by confusion, fear, and doubt. The team, once united by their shared cause, found themselves unraveling at the seams. The room that once buzzed with plans and strategies now echoed with empty silence. Each member of the team lost in their own thoughts, questioning not only the mission but their very allegiance. The betrayal that had so violently ripped the hero from their midst had cast a long shadow over everything they had fought for, and no one seemed to know how to move forward. The strategist, usually the calm, calculated mind of the team, was the first to speak out, but his words, though logical, were laced with bitterness. He'd never fully trusted the hero's methods, always doubting that the hero's idealism was enough to secure their survival in the real world. It wasn't that he wanted the team to fail. It was just that he had always believed that power, control, and intellect were the true sources of strength. In his eyes, the hero had always been too naive, too driven by emotion to make the hard decisions when necessary. But now, with the hero gone, the cracks in his own philosophy were becoming impossible to ignore. The strategist's need for control was now colliding with the reality that there was no one left to lead them, and in this chaos, every decision felt more like a gamble than a calculated move. Meanwhile, the warrior, the team's fiercest protector, was spiraling. His anger, once a force of good, had now become a dangerous and unpredictable element. The thought that his comrade, his friend, had been taken by their own people, perhaps even by him, was a weight he couldn't bear. He couldn't understand why anyone would betray the hero, someone who had given everything for the team. But in his heart, he feared that the team's division had been inevitable, and now it had manifested in a way that could never be undone. His quest for vengeance, the thing that had always fueled him, had only intensified. The mission that was supposed to save the world was now secondary to his own quest for answers and revenge. But who was he really angry at? The person who had betrayed them, or himself for not seeing the signs? The empath, always the glue holding the team's fragile harmony together, was struggling more than the others. Her ability to feel the emotions of those around her, to connect with them on a deeper level, had once made her an indispensable member of the team. But now, every person she tried to reach out to only seemed more distant. The guilt she felt for not sensing the impending betrayal gnawed at her, and the weight of that guilt was almost unbearable. In her heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had failed the hero, that somehow, if she had acted sooner, she could have stopped it. But the truth was, she didn't know who to trust anymore, not even herself. Her emotions were a tangle of confusion, regret, and fear. And that fear, though unspoken, began to spread to the team like a virus, infecting every decision, every interaction. And then there was the outsider, the one who had once been the wild card, the one whose allegiance to the team was still fresh, still unproven. In the aftermath of the hero's disappearance, the outsider found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. They had joined the team with a clear purpose, to be a part of something bigger than themselves, to fight for the greater good. But now, with the hero gone, they were beginning to wonder if that purpose had ever really existed. The truth was, they had never fully understood the dynamics of the team. They had always felt like an outsider, trying to fit into a world that didn't fully accept them. And now, with the trust they had placed in their teammates shaken, they were left with nothing but doubt. Had they made the right choice? Or had they been manipulated? Just like the others? The team was splintering, and the cracks were becoming more pronounced by the day. But there was one thing they could all agree on. The hero had to be found. The kidnapping was not just a personal betrayal. It was a threat to everything they had worked for, everything they had built. The enemy, whoever they were, had taken the hero to send a message. But what was that message? Was it a power grab? A warning? Or was it something deeper, something more sinister? As the team began to search for clues, their investigation led them down a dark and dangerous path. Every lead seemed to take them in circles, every piece of information either hidden or distorted. It was clear that whoever had orchestrated the kidnapping had planned it meticulously, covering their tracks at every turn. And just when it seemed like they were getting closer to the truth, another twist would throw them off course. There were moments when it felt as though they were being led into a trap designed to keep them running in circles, unable to reach their goal. But why? It was then that the team stumbled upon something they hadn't anticipated. A shadowy figure who had been working in the background, pulling strings, manipulating events. This person, whose identity was shrouded in mystery, seemed to have knowledge of the hero's past, of the very foundation of the team. It was as if they knew everything about each of them, their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, and used that knowledge to sow discord among them. But what was their end game? What did they want with the hero? The figure's presence was felt everywhere, but their face was never seen. It was as though they were always one step ahead, always in control, even when it seemed like the team was making progress. They were playing a game, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. With every step the team took toward the truth, the danger grew, and the cost of failure became more apparent. They were not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for the future of the world. The hero's kidnapping was only the beginning of a much larger plot, a plot that threatened to bring everything they had worked for crashing down. As the tension reached its peak, the unthinkable happened. One by one, the members of the team began to receive strange messages, cryptic warnings, taunting riddles, and threats. Each message seemed to be designed to push them further into chaos, to fracture their already fragile unity. The messages spoke of betrayal, of secrets, and of a future that no one could predict. But the most chilling part was a final message, a message that would haunt them all forever. The hero is not who you think he is. The truth is far darker than you can imagine. This message sent shockwaves through the team. Could it be true? Had they been following the wrong leader all this time? The hero, the person they had trusted above all others, was hiding something. Something so terrible that it could change everything. But what was it? And why hadn't they seen it before? In the midst of the chaos, the outsider uncovered a hidden document, one that had been kept secret even from the team. The document revealed a shocking truth. The hero had known about the impending betrayal all along. He had been planning for it, preparing for it. He had seen the fractures forming within the team and had made plans to survive. But the question was, why hadn't he told anyone? Was the hero truly the person they had all believed him to be? Or had they been living in a lie this whole time? As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the team realized that they had underestimated the danger. The hero's disappearance was only the tip of the iceberg, and the true threat was still out there, lurking in the shadows. And now, with everything on the line, the team was faced with a choice. They could either band together and face the unknown, or they could fall apart completely, torn apart by their own mistrust and fear. But one thing was certain. The hero's kidnapping was just the beginning. The real game was only now starting, and the stakes had never been higher as the team stood at the crossroads of their darkest hour, their trust in one another hanging by a thread. The truth was beginning to reveal itself in unexpected and alarming ways. Each new discovery chipped away at their once unshakable unity, and yet the team found itself reluctantly bound together by a single, undeniable truth. The hero's disappearance was only the beginning of a much larger, much darker conspiracy that threatened not only their survival, but the very future of the world they had sworn to protect. The cryptic messages and taunting riddles had taken their toll, shaking the very foundation of the team's trust in each other. The fear of betrayal festered, and with it, a new wave of paranoia began to take hold. Who could they trust? Was it their own teammates, the ones they had fought alongside for years? Or was it the shadowy figure who had manipulated every move, every decision, every inch of their journey? The more they uncovered, the more questions arose, and the answers seemed to slip further and further out of reach. But it was the outsider, who had been an enigma from the start, who stumbled upon the final key to unraveling the truth. In an old, seemingly forgotten corner of the team's archives, they discovered a series of encrypted files, buried beneath layers of misinformation and half-forgotten data. The documents were in the hero's handwriting. The outsider, having gained access to the hero's private communications during their brief time on the team, had always suspected that the hero was hiding something. Now, the truth was staring them in the face. The hero had known about the impending betrayal all along. The messages, the mysterious figure pulling strings in the background, the fractured trust within the team, everything had been meticulously planned. Not just by an external enemy, but by the hero themselves. They had set the stage for this downfall, not as a passive victim, but as an active participant in a larger scheme. But why? The hero had always been the one who believed in the power of unity, in fighting for something greater than themselves. Why then, had they turned against the team they had sworn to protect? The revelation hit the team like a hammer blow, and the tension that had been building for days finally reached a boiling point. Each team member had their own theory, their own interpretation of the hero's actions, but none of them could make sense of it. They confronted the outsider, demanding answers. But the outsider, too, was lost in the web of confusion. They knew only one thing for certain. The hero had been preparing for something much bigger, and they had played the team like pawns in a game they couldn't even begin to understand. The strategist, ever the thinker, pored over the documents with a renewed sense of urgency. He had always prided himself on being able to read between the lines, to anticipate the next move before anyone else. But this was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The hero's plans, the cryptic messages, the manipulation, it all pointed to a singular goal, a goal that none of them had seen coming. It was at that moment that the empath, whose ability to read emotions had always been both a strength and a burden, felt something she had never experienced before, an overwhelming surge of despair. The hero had planned for this moment, knowing exactly how each of them would react, what they would do, and how they would feel. But the hero's own emotions, now revealed in the documents, were anything but clear. There was no simple explanation for their actions, no easy way to categorize them as a hero or a villain. They were simply human, flawed and broken, just like the rest of them. The warrior, who had once been so sure of his own path, was now consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. He had spent years fighting alongside the hero, trusting him with his life, and now he felt betrayed in ways he couldn't even describe. But as the team continued to dig deeper into the hero's past, the warrior began to understand. The hero wasn't just fighting for the world. They were fighting for something far more personal, a redemption that had nothing to do with the team or the mission or even the world they were trying to save. The hero had been running from their own past, from mistakes they could never undo, and that pain had driven them to make decisions no one could fully comprehend. And yet, the truth was undeniable. The hero had sacrificed everything, including their own humanity, for a cause that had never truly been theirs to begin with. The team had been pawns in a game they didn't even know they were playing, and the hero had orchestrated every move, every conflict, every betrayal. But what had they hoped to achieve? What was the end game? The answers came in a final, shocking revelation, one that none of them could have predicted. The hero hadn't been working alone. In fact, they had been part of a much larger conspiracy, a web of deception that spanned decades, and the team had been unknowingly caught in the middle of it all. The shadowy figure who had been pulling the strings, the one who had been manipulating the team from the shadows, was none other than the hero's long-lost sibling, a sibling who had been thought dead, lost in a tragic accident years before. The hero's sibling had been the true mastermind behind the plot, orchestrating the team's downfall from the very beginning. The kidnapping wasn't just a betrayal. It was a carefully calculated move to extract the team's greatest asset, the hero, and use him as a pawn in a much larger game. But why? What was the siblings' ultimate goal? The answer lay in the team's past, in the very origins of their mission. The hero and their sibling had been part of an organization that had once sought to save the world, but over time, it had become twisted by power, greed, and ambition. The hero had left that organization years ago, choosing to strike out on her own, but the sibling had stayed behind, rising through the ranks to become the true power behind the scenes. Now, the sibling had plans of their own, plans that would change the world forever. And the hero, for all their ideals and noble intentions, had known that the only way to stop them was to become the very thing they had sworn to fight against. The hero had played their part in conspiracy willingly, knowing that the only way to save the world was to destroy it from within. It was a sacrifice, a dark, painful decision that no one could understand, not even the hero themselves. The final confrontation was inevitable. As the team confronted the hero's sibling, the truth of their actions became painfully clear. The sibling had no intention of saving the world. They intended to control it, to remake it in their own image. The team's only hope was to stop them, but to do so, they would have to confront the darkest part of themselves, to face the very flaws that had brought them to this point. In the end, it was the team's unity, however fragile, that proved to be their greatest strength. Together, they fought not just for survival, but for redemption. They fought not just against the hero's sibling, but against the forces of darkness within themselves. It was a battle that would change them forever, one that would cost them dearly, but in the end, they emerged victorious. The hero, broken and battered, stood before them one last time, their face etched with the weight of their choices. They had made their peace, but at what cost? The team, once fractured beyond repair, now stood united once again, though forever changed. The hero's final words echoed in their minds, a reminder that even the greatest of us are not immune to darkness, and that true strength lies in the ability to rise above it. As the team walked away from the wreckage of their past, they knew that their journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new enemies, and new obstacles to overcome. But they had learned something far more important. That true strength comes not from the victories we win, but from the lessons we learn along the way. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.